that has many
built over
villages and built on top.
Yeah, many civilizations, many periods. So we're looking at the tell of Beit Sha'an. Okay, that hill there is an artificial hill. There was probably a bit of a hill there in the first place. But when you see a hill that shape in the land of Israel, you know that it's a tell. It has a special form. Somebody says it looks like an upside down cupcake. It has a certain shape. It's usually flat on the top. And that is layers and layers of different buildings, okay? The tell of Beit Sha'an, and that is where Beit Sha'an began. And why did it begin here? Because, as I said before, there's a stream. It is blessed with water. There's two streams. There's one on this side of the hill and one on the other side of the hill. And it's just at the crossing point. You remember the great Jezreel Valley? You haven't forgotten that. Megiddo?
Yeah.
You know, the battleground of history, the valley that crosses Israel from west to east. We followed the pass. We came into the Jezreel Valley. It opened up. We looked at the Jezreel Valley when we, almost in the dark. You remember when we were up on the mountain near Nazareth? We're at the eastern end of it. Okay? We went, the western end comes out at Mount Carmel, Haifa on the Mediterranean. It crosses the country from west to east. That's west, that's east, and this is the meeting point of the Jezreel Valley and the Jordan Valley. So a great city grew up here. Like Megiddo grew up at the pass between the Carmel Mountains and the Jezreel Valley. At the other end, everybody passed this way. Caravans of merchants and armies and conquerors. And so at this meeting point of this great international highway across the Jezreel Valley and through the Jordan Valley where they meet, at this point that you could reach from the Jordan Valley, we didn't come up very steeply, it's a very easy access through this city of Beit Sha'an. 5,000 years ago, the first inhabitants on the hill. The Egyptians conquered it. We're interested in the period when the Philistines were fighting Saul in this area. All the stories around Jezreel, Gideon and the Midianites, Deborah and Barak, all in the Jezreel Valley, and in the Philistines and Saul. There are many stories of Saul in the Jezreel Valley, going to, do you remember the Witch of Endor? All this happened in this area. And the great battle of Kippur took place on the mountains of Gilboa, which are just the mountains behind us. Through the mist we'll be coming to them. The mountains of Gilboa are just behind us. And the tragedy of Saul, of course, was that he lost his charisma, didn't he? The power of God was no longer with him. And he was, well, there are two versions. Either he threw himself on his sword or he asked one of his servants to kill him. It's different in Chronicles and in Samuel 1, and the reference of Beit Sha'an comes at the end of Samuel, book of Samuel. Now the Philistines fought against Israel. The Israelites fled before them, and many fell slain on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines pressed hard after Saul and his sons, and they killed his sons Jonathan, Abinadab and Malchishua. The fighting grew fierce around Saul, and when the archers overtook him, they wounded him critically. Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and run me through, or these uncircumcised fellows will come and run me through and amuse me." But the armor-bearer was terrified and would not do it, so Saul took his own sword and fell on it. When the armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he too fell on his sword and died with him. So Saul and his 3 sons and his armor-bearer and all his men died together that same day. The next day, when the Philistines came to strip the dead, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head and stripped off his armor and sent messengers throughout the land of the Philistines to proclaim the news in the temple of their idols and among their people. They put his armor in the temple of the Ashtoreths and fastened his body to the wall of Beit Sha'an. And when the people of Jabesh Gilead, that's on the other side of the Jordan, heard of what the Philistines had done to Saul, All their valiant men journeyed through the night to Beit Sha'an. They took down the bodies of Saul and his sons from the wall of Beit Sha'an and went to Jabesh, where they burned them. Then they took their bones and buried them under a tamarisk tree at Jabesh, and they fasted 7 days. Remember that he'd helped them in the past, so they owed it. So they paid him that last honor that he wasn't left, his body wasn't left. And they buried him as a king should be buried, or as any human being. That happened here on the walls of Beit Sha'an. The city was then on the Tel. Now, but you're saying there's nothing there now because the city moved down. In the Roman period, it moved down from the Tel, down below. And that's what we're looking at, the great Roman city. It's one of our major excavations. They had a theatre, which is to the right, and a great bathhouse, and a main street, which was called the Cardo. We'll be on the Cardo in Jerusalem. Every Roman city had a Cardo. And what happened to this city? It was destroyed in an earthquake in 749. And it was totally forgotten about. It lay just like, Vesuvius, Etna covered the city. Is it Pompeii? Yeah, it's covered. I haven't been there. This city also was just covered. It wasn't a volcano, it was an earthquake, and it was totally covered. And now, gradually, the city is being, as it were, put back up. The city just fell over. Everything fell in the same direction. I told you we're on an earthquake valley, and I have to tell you, not to worry you because you're going home, but last night they said that every 100 years we have a massive earthquake in this country. And they said on the news last night we're due for another big one, and we're not prepared for it. And it's going to be big, it's going to cover the whole of the country. This is an active earthquake valley, rift, and this is a proof of it. 749. Beit Sha'an just crumpled, it just fell over. And this great Roman Byzantine city was buried until this century when they started to do the dig. And this is an ongoing dig. This is just the center of the city, all the public buildings. It covers a huge area. These are the public buildings in the center of the city. So I think it would be fun to do a quick walk around. If anybody doesn't want to,